It had been a stormy evening in a quiet, sleepy town nestled between the hills. Rain poured down like sheets of glass, blurring the edges of everything and transforming streets into shallow rivers. Daniel Monroe had just closed up his modest auto repair shop when he saw the flash of headlights veer dangerously off the slippery road and collide with a tree near the edge of town. Without a second thought, he jumped into his old pickup truck and raced toward the wreck. There, slumped over the wheel of a luxury car, was a woman, bruised, bleeding, but conscious. Her eyes fluttered open as Daniel pulled open the mangled door, his hands trembling but firm. "I've got you," he said softly, lifting her with surprising strength. She didn't resist, just nodded faintly before losing consciousness. The hospital lights flickered as Daniel paced the waiting room, soaked to the bone, his 7-year-old daughter Emma clinging to his leg. He hadn't had time to drop her home. The nurses whispered, intrigued by the well-dressed woman who had no ID but wore a diamond necklace hidden beneath her coat. Hours later, the doctor emerged. "She's stable," he said. "Mild concussion, fractured wrist, a few broken ribs, but she'll recover." Daniel exhaled deeply, the weight lifting off his chest. He nodded and whispered a thank you, then offered to pay part of her hospital fee. He didn't have much. His life was a patchwork of responsibility, parenting, and honest work. But he couldn't walk away without trying. He didn't expect what followed. The woman's name was Evelyn Ward, a high-profile tech investor, reclusive and enigmatic, known in elite circles, but never one for the spotlight. The media had no idea she'd vanished for a brief personal getaway, let alone crashed into a tree in a rural town where no one recognized her. When she woke, her first sight was Daniel sleeping in the corner of her hospital room, Emma curled up beside him. The kindness of this stranger overwhelmed her. There had been no fanfare, no greed. Just compassion. The next morning, Evelyn stirred. "Are you the man who brought me in?" Daniel stood, suddenly self-conscious. "Yeah, that was me. You're lucky. That tree nearly had the last word. You stayed. I figured you shouldn't wake up alone. Didn't have your name, and, well, my daughter refused to leave until you woke up." Emma beamed proudly. "I gave you my teddy bear," she whispered. Evelyn looked down and noticed the small stuffed animal resting by her side. A rare warmth spread through her, something unfamiliar. She'd been surrounded by wealth, comfort, and admiration for years, but never something as pure as this. The next few days passed in a haze of painkillers, healing, and quiet conversations. Evelyn was fascinated by Daniel. He was the kind of man who lived simply but loved deeply. He cooked for the nurses, changed her bandages without flinching, read books to Emma aloud in the evenings when the hospital grew quiet. There was a quiet strength in him that Evelyn hadn't seen in any man before. Not the venture capitalists, not the moguls she'd dated. Daniel never asked who she was. He never probed, never treated her differently. Which is why Evelyn finally asked him, one cool morning as he brought her coffee, "Why aren't you curious about me?" He smiled. "You matter because you're a person, not because of what you do. Isn't that enough?" That answer, so disarmingly simple, hit her like a wave. Weeks passed. Evelyn moved into a rented cottage nearby to recover. Daniel continued helping, fixing a leaky faucet, walking Emma over for dinners, always offering assistance without expectation. She had wealth beyond measure, but Daniel had something more enduring, sincerity. And his life, though burdened, was filled with an authentic joy she hadn't tasted in years. Their bond grew not from grand declarations, but shared silences. From the way he held the door, the way Emma trusted her enough to braid her hair, the way he made her laugh without trying. One evening, Evelyn sat with Daniel on his creaky front porch. The air smelled of rain and pine. Stars glittered above, scattered like diamonds across black velvet. "I should have died that night," she said. "But you didn't. Do you believe in fate?" she asked, her voice barely audible. He considered. "I believe people cross paths for a reason. Sometimes it's pain, sometimes it's purpose. Sometimes both." She reached for his hand. "I never told you what I do. Who I am." "You're Evelyn," he said, giving her a sidelong glance. "That's who you are to me." That night, something shifted. She realized she didn't want to return to the steel towers and artificial lights of her former life. The city was filled with noise. This town, this man, offered something different. A place to breathe. A reason to stay. But change wasn't easy. Her past eventually caught up. One morning, a black car rolled into town. A pair of her executives stepped out, confused by their CEO's extended absence. They didn't understand why she wore jeans now, or why she smelled like fresh bread and engine oil. Daniel overheard them, and for the first time, doubt crept in. "You're a millionaire?" he asked her that evening, his tone unreadable. She nodded, unable to meet his eyes. He paused. "I don't care about that. But I need to know, was any of this real?" Her voice cracked. "More real than anything I've known." Still, he withdrew. Old wounds from being abandoned by his ex resurfaced. He feared he was just a detour in her life, a pit stop on the road back to everything polished and powerful. Evelyn didn't fight to explain. Instead, she left for the city. For days, silence lingered like fog. Emma grew quieter. Daniel returned to his routines, but his heart wasn't in it. Then, weeks later, a letter arrived. No return address. Just his name, handwritten. Inside, Evelyn had written, "I left because I thought you needed time. But I never stopped loving you, not for a moment. I've sold my stake in the company. I've walked away from boardrooms and press releases. Because I don't want a life of riches without purpose. You gave me purpose. You gave me love. I'm building a foundation here in town. A community center, a library, a future, for your daughter, for all the children. But most of all, I want to build a life with you. If you'll have me, I'll be waiting. Under the oak tree. Just like the night we first sat together." Daniel didn't need more time. He ran. Emma ran too. And under the old oak tree, Evelyn waited, barefoot in the grass, her arms wide, her smile brighter than any fortune. Love, as they discovered, wasn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. It was about trust. About choosing each other every day. And as fireflies danced around them and stars blinked in quiet applause, Daniel finally whispered, "You didn't fall into my life. You were sent." Evelyn kissed him gently. "Then let's never let go." Their story had just begun. The next days unfolded like a slow-moving symphony. Every note tender, deliberate, meaningful. Evelyn didn't rush to move in with Daniel, nor did he pressure her. Instead, they met in the quiet moments. Early mornings sipping coffee on the porch while Emma chased butterflies in the dewy grass. Afternoons walking through the farmer's market where Evelyn asked far too many questions about jams and pickles, and long, golden evenings where they spoke less and felt more. Word spread, of course. In a small town, silence was rare and curiosity constant. Whispers filled the local diner, the barbershop, even the post office. "That's her, the woman from the accident, the rich one." But Evelyn met every gaze with warmth and disarming humility. She attended town hall meetings, donated anonymously to the school's renovation fund, bought new books for the aging library, then personally labeled and shelved each one. Daniel watched all of this with quiet admiration. He never expected her to stay. He certainly never expected her to belong. But she did. Emma took to Evelyn as if she'd been part of their world all along. She started calling her Evie with a kind of innocent affection that neither Daniel nor Evelyn had the heart to correct. Evelyn, who had once signed billion-dollar contracts, now braided Emma's hair every morning before school and slipped surprise notes into her lunchbox that read, "Be brave, little lion, or you are made of magic." Daniel's house, once a space of necessity and function, gradually transformed. Not through opulence, but through presence. A soft lamp here, a cushion there. A new coat of paint that Evelyn insisted they apply together, resulting in more streaks on each other's faces than the walls. Laughter, that once only came in small pockets, now echoed freely through every room. And yet, it wasn't always easy. Evelyn's past wasn't a closed door, it was a revolving one. There were phone calls, urgent ones from former colleagues. Requests to consult, offers she would have leaped for once. One morning, as Daniel repaired a neighbor's tractor, he saw her standing by the lake, phone pressed to her ear, her expression unreadable. She hung up quickly when he approached and smiled too quickly. He didn't say anything then, but she did that night. "They want me back. Not for full-time, just strategy. An advisory board seat. From here. Remote." His hands paused mid-stir as he made dinner. "What do you want?" She looked at him for a long moment. "You." He exhaled, but didn't smile. "Are you sure you won't resent giving it all up?" "I didn't give it up," she said. "I traded it. For something that feeds my soul, not just my ambition." Daniel nodded, but a quiet insecurity still echoed inside him. He was a man of simple means. She had lived in penthouses, attended galas, sipped champagne with presidents and visionaries. Could he truly be enough for her long-term? But Evelyn seemed to sense this. The next day, she brought him a dusty box from her past. Inside were framed articles, photos with world leaders, a sleek crystal award engraved with her name. She laid them all out on the floor of his workshop. "These are my trophies," she said softly. "They meant the world to me once. But I want you to see them before I let them go." Daniel frowned. "You don't have to." "I do," she interrupted gently. "Because I want you to know that I'm not clinging to the woman I was. I'm becoming someone new. Someone better. Because of you." He looked at her, then at the objects, then back at her. Slowly, he knelt beside her. "You don't need to prove anything to me, Evelyn. But I'm honored you did." They burned the box that evening, piece by piece, in the fire pit behind the house. The flames rose, golden and wild, carrying ashes of a life once lived into the night sky. Later, Emma danced around the dying fire with a sparkler in hand, her giggles wrapping around the stars. Evelyn leaned into Daniel's chest, her fingers laced with his. "I'm not afraid anymore," she whispered. "Of what?" he asked. "Of stillness. Of love. Of being seen." Daniel kissed her forehead. "Then stay seen. I'll keep looking." Weeks turned to months. The foundation Evelyn began flourished. The community center opened with a festival, complete with homemade pies and paper lanterns. Daniel fixed up an old school bus, converting it into a mobile tech lab for rural schools, with Evelyn's quiet funding and his expert hands. Together, they brought light into corners of the town long neglected. But even as their present bloomed, the past still stirred its shadows. One afternoon, while cleaning out her cottage, Evelyn stumbled upon an envelope she hadn't noticed before, postmarked months ago. Inside was a photograph. Her brother, Samuel. The only family she had left, estranged for years. His note was short, in sharp handwriting. "I saw the news about the accident. I know we haven't spoken in years, but you should know. Dad passed. I found something he left for you. If you want it, come to the vineyard. One last time." She stared at the note for a long time. That night, she told Daniel, "It's not unfinished business. It's a part of me I buried." He didn't try to stop her. Instead, he packed her a small bag. "I'll keep things warm here." The trip was short but heavy. The vineyard where she'd grown up, where so many of her earliest dreams had bloomed and shattered, was just as she remembered, sprawling, quiet, lonely. Samuel greeted her without words. Just an awkward hug and a strained smile. They talked. Not everything healed, but truth surfaced. Her father, once proud and overbearing, had left her a letter. A real one, handwritten. Not of regret, but of recognition. He'd watched her rise, admired her grit, and perhaps, in his own flawed way, loved her more than he'd said. When she returned days later, she was quiet. But her eyes, those sharp, commanding eyes, were softer. Daniel waited at the porch, wrench in hand, grease on his cheek. She ran to him. No words. Just arms around neck, lips against lips. "I'm home," she breathed. "Welcome back," he said. And under the wide, watchful sky, in the arms of the man who saw her before the world remembered who she was, Evelyn finally believed in forever. Seasons changed quietly, the same way love had bloomed between Daniel and Evelyn. Unannounced, patient, and powerful. The once-forgotten corners of their lives began to flourish, not with wealth or fame, but with a richness only sincerity could grow. The small town, with its cracked sidewalks and aging maples, had transformed, not because of Evelyn's money, but because of her heart. It was in the way she listened to old Mrs. Crenshaw's stories at the bakery, how she taught coding to wide-eyed teenagers at the community center, or how she always waved to the shy boy across the street who had never spoken a word until he gave her a crumpled drawing labeled Miss E. Daniel, too, began to smile more. Not the polite nod he gave customers at the shop, but full, deep smiles, the kind that felt like a secret being shared. His laughter was louder. His shoulders, once heavy with responsibility, now rested more easily. And with Evelyn by his side, the silence in his home had been replaced by music, by the hum of family dinners, by bedtime stories and spontaneous dancing in the kitchen when Emma couldn't sleep. Emma thrived. She had always been bright, but now she sparkled. Her world expanded with Evelyn's love. Saturday art projects in the sunroom, bedtime adventures, narrated by both her dad and Evelyn in silly voices, and quiet lessons in confidence that only a woman like Evelyn could teach. She stopped asking about her biological mother and started calling Evelyn, my heart mom, without ever being prompted. That term, so innocent yet profound, melted Evelyn to tears the first time she heard it. Life no longer felt like survival to Daniel, it felt like legacy. Evelyn never returned to her old life. The boardrooms called again, yes. The interviews, the magazines, even a documentary crew showed up once, begging to tell her comeback story. She declined them all. She had nothing to prove and everything to protect. Her new life wasn't a headline, it was sacred. Instead, she invested her energy into building something lasting. The Ward Monroe Foundation opened its doors in a former warehouse Daniel had helped restore by hand. Its purpose was simple: to provide opportunity where there had been none, to lift others in the same quiet, unwavering way Daniel had once lifted her. There were scholarships, community gardens, mobile health vans, literacy programs, and mentorships. But at the heart of it all was their story. Not written in plaques or spoken from podiums, but whispered in every act of kindness, every child whose dreams were no longer distant. And yet, even in this abundance of new beginnings, life tested them. One summer evening, Daniel collapsed in the garage. A minor heart condition, the doctors said. Stress and exhaustion, perhaps overlooked in his pursuit of holding everything together. Evelyn never left his side. She took Emma's hand and walked into every appointment with him, her strength unshaken. As he lay in a sterile white bed with beeping machines, Daniel looked at her with tired eyes. "I thought I had to do it all," he whispered. "You don't," she said, pressing her lips to his forehead. "You never did. That's what love is. We carry it together." He recovered. Slowly. Gratefully. And it changed him, not out of fear, but with clarity. He began to delegate at the shop, took Emma to school himself more often, and spent entire afternoons just holding Evelyn's hand on the porch without saying a word. Because now, every minute felt earned. Sacred. The day he proposed was simple. No fanfare. No crowd. Just a note taped to the mirror that read, "I already found the richest woman in the world. Will you marry the luckiest man?" Inside the ring box was a silver band carved with Emma's handwriting. "Love made us a family." Evelyn cried for an hour. They married under the same oak tree where she had once waited for him, unsure if love would ever feel safe. This time, there were lanterns strung between branches, wildflowers picked by Emma, and a town gathered not to gawk, but to celebrate what they'd all witnessed. A miracle made not of wealth or circumstance, but of courage and choice. The ceremony was brief. The vows honest. Daniel spoke of finding light when he least expected it. Evelyn spoke of discovering home in a man with calloused hands and a heart of gold. Emma held both their hands as they said, "I do," sealing a bond that had long been written into the rhythm of their lives. As night fell and the stars blinked above, Daniel pulled Evelyn aside. "Do you remember the first thing you said to me after waking up in the hospital?" he asked. She smiled. "I think it was something like, 'Are you the man who brought me in?'" "No," he said, stepping closer. "It was, 'You stayed. And I want you to know, I'm still staying. Always.'" She reached up, her fingers resting over his heart. "And I'm still choosing you." They danced slowly beneath the branches, surrounded by laughter and music and a sky full of blessings. Fireflies drifted lazily through the air. The townspeople clapped. Emma twirled in circles, flower crown lopsided, her joy uncontainable. And in that moment, time seemed to fold into itself. The story of a woman who had once lost everything to success, but found everything in surrender. The story of a man who had spent years surviving for his daughter and finally learned to live. The story of a little girl whose childhood had been shaded by uncertainty and now sparkled with love. People often believed that miracles had to be grand, but Daniel and Evelyn proved that the real ones arrive quietly. On a rainy night. In a stranger's arms. In a small town with broken roads and golden hearts. Where a single act of kindness rewrote destinies, and where love, once planted, grew wild and unstoppable. And as they stood beneath the same stars that once watched their lives unravel, they now stood as a family, not born from blood or bound by convenience, but forged in trust, chosen through fire, and kept alive by the simplest, most powerful truth. Love is not found. It is made, again and again, by those who believe enough to build it.